Hi, Bible 101. It's Sarah. Good to see you again. Today, we are going to start looking closely at stories in the Bible as we try to figure out who wrote the Bible. So you may remember that I've said that the Bible is unlike any other book you've read. And one way that it's different is that it has many different authors. Sometimes parts of the same book within the Bible, even the same chapter within the same book, are written by different people. And it can take a bit of sleuthing to figure out which parts are written by which writers, but scholars have identified some clues to help us. After this video, you are going to open your Bibles with Phil and take a look at two stories that sit side by side. Both stories tell the story of creation, how everything came to be, but they are very different from each other. Spoiler alert, they were written by different people. So, what do we know about these different people who have written the parts of the Bible? Well, there were some biblical scholars way back when, actually not even that long ago, a few hundred years, who identified 4 different sources for the writing in the Hebrew Bible, which is the part of the Bible we're studying this year. And they gave them letter names. So I'm going to share this with you to give you a little overview of who these 4 writers, these 4 sources of the writing might be. Okay, first one, J, the writer J. And the reason this writer is called J is because all of the text that we think comes from this writer uses the term Yahweh for God, which can be spelled J-A-H-W-E-H, Yahweh. So Yahweh, or J, we think is the oldest source of the Bible, coming from the 10th or the 11th century BCE. So we're talking like before Jesus, before the Common Era, 10 or 11 centuries, 1,000 or 1,100 years. This writer, J, is who we think wrote the second of the 2 creation stories that you're going to look at. And in that story, you'll notice that God is like a character in a novel. God has a role to play like a character in the story. And you guys will talk about that in a minute. So that's J. The next source is called E. And it's called E because this writer uses the term Elohim for God, which starts with the letter E. E-L-O-H-I-M, Elohim. And that's the term that this source uses for God all the way up until we get to the story of Moses meeting God in the book of Exodus, where God reveals God's self as Yahweh. So then it changes to Yahweh. So in the parts of the Bible that we think are written by E, God is much more distant and transcendent, kind of more powerful and all-knowing in a way that feels different than the God of J, which is more like the character in the novel I said. So this God, the one in E, communicates indirectly with people. And this God, or this vision of God, communicates through angels and prophets and dreams rather than appearing side by side with people and talking directly to them. Okay. Some people think that J and E are the 2 oldest parts of the Bible and that they kind of got mushed together early on and became sort of one holy sacred text. So sometimes we think of J and E together, and it's hard to tease out which one is the author of a certain thing from the oldest parts of the Bible. Okay, J and E. Next, we have P. And this source is called P because it is the priestly source. This source is interested in the whole priestly family of Aaron. You might remember Aaron. He was the brother of Moses. And in parts of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible where there are genealogies, where it tells like the whole family tree, or perhaps it has a whole long list of things, that's usually attributed to P. P liked to write those kind of lists. We also think that P is the writer of the first creation story that you're going to look at in a minute. It's a story that is almost like a list of the 7 days of creation. And also, P often uses language that's kind of liturgical. It repeats itself. And it was good. The first morning, the first evening, the first day. It's very poetic language. And in the writings of P, God appears very majestic. Okay. The fourth and final source, D. And D stands for the Deuteronomist. You might know that Deuteronomy is one of the books of the Hebrew Bible. It comes right after Exodus. So the Deuteronomist, we believe, wrote Deuteronomy and the book of Joshua and the book of Judges and Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings. And themes that D liked to write about include being faithful to Jerusalem, the mother city, and the importance of worshiping God in one place. D likes long sermons that often have lots of moral themes in them, how to be good, how not to be bad. That's writing that D often did. All right, so we have the four. We have J, we have E, and we have P, and we have D. But then, I'm going to throw another letter at you, R. R stands for the redactors. These were the editors. These were the people, it was probably a group, who came together and took all these writings of J and E and P and D and put them together. Chose which parts do they want to keep, which parts do you want to throw out. And it turns out that these editors preserved multiple voices, all four of those voices, really. And those voices have very different perspectives on what God is and how God works in the world. So, if you ever go on to do some real scholarly research of the Bible, you may find yourself highlighting and underlining and giving different colors to different parts of a book and saying, well, maybe the yellow highlight is J, and the orange highlight is E, and the green highlight is P, and the blue highlight is D. And you'll find that each page will then be multiple colors, because woven together are all these writers and all these different images of God. Okay, I'm going to let you now go and take a look at two stories written by two different writers. Remember, P probably wrote the first creation story, and J might have written the second one. So take a look and see what you think the differences are. Thanks.